I thought a neighborhood was a place. I learned ours was a game, and the rules were hidden in a binder no one wanted me to open. They canceled our election with an email, but the silence that followed sounded like a lock clicking. I was on my porch when the subject line chimed, Annual Meeting Update, Maple Grove Estates. The sky had the lavender bruising of evening, and the cicadas were tuning up for their nightly sermon. I opened the email, expecting reminders about time and place. Instead, Redwood Property Management, on behalf of our HOA board, regretted to inform us that due to unforeseen administrative constraints, the annual election was postponed indefinitely. They thanked us for our continued trust. I read it 3 times, as if the words might transform if I stared long enough. This was my first year in Maple Grove. I'd moved in after my divorce, half wanting to disappear and half wanting to be found by a life that felt like mine. I'd painted the front door a hopeful robin's egg blue. It earned me a violation notice within a week. "Don't take it personally," Rita said when she brought me the newsletter cookies around Christmas. Rita had been here since the HOA was just a brochure. They prefer beige. Beige is quiet. Beige, it turned out, was also how the board liked its politics. Dues had jumped. The pool closed for maintenance right after July 4th and didn't reopen. A new landscaping contractor scalped the azaleas and sent invoices that read like golf scores. And now, no election. I walked to the clubhouse that night, more out of habit than plan, my dog tugging toward the green belt as if he knew a squirrel union was meeting. The glass door was locked, lights off, the corkboard inside still pinned with sun-faded notices, splash day, last summer, a missing cat. A reminder, this made me laugh without humor, to submit candidates for the 2023 board election by March. I pressed my palm to the glass. My reflection stared back. Tired, stubborn, the set of my jaw my sister used to tease me about. Inside the lobby, there was a shelf with binders, bylaws, rules, architectural guidelines, backlit like reliquaries. I couldn't reach them, but I remembered someone saying the documents were online. I walked home with the dog, feeling a prickle between my shoulder blades that had nothing to do with the dark. At my kitchen table, under the pool of light that made the rest of the house feel hollow, I downloaded the bylaws. I skimmed, then slowed, then started again from the beginning. Article 3, Section 3.1. An annual meeting of the members shall be held each year. Section 3.3. Directors shall be elected at the annual meeting by the members. And then, like a fuse catching flame, members representing 20% of the total votes may call a special meeting by petition. They were allowed to hold over in limited circumstances, but indefinitely wasn't one of them. My heart thudded. The board hadn't just inconvenienced us, they'd stepped outside the lines and they were hoping no one would notice. I sent a message to the community forum. Anyone concerned about the canceled election? Coffee on my porch Sunday. Let's talk. I expected a shrug. Instead, the replies came like rain on a tin roof. Samir from Birch Court. Finally, Lauren, who had been fined for her sunflower. Flag. I'll bring muffins. Anonymous. Be careful. At midnight, a slow car rolled past my house. Headlights crawled over my living room walls, fixed on that robin's egg door. I listened as the engine idled, then faded. When I opened, the front door, a white envelope waited on the mat. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a single typed line. Cease distributing unauthorized materials or face enforcement action. I looked up at the quiet street. Its dark windows. Beige. So very beige. Okay, I whispered to the empty air, to the binders I couldn't touch, to whoever thought a threat could keep me in my lane. Then we'll do it by the book. The dog lifted his head at the tone in my voice. Sunday was 4 days away. I had 4 days to learn every rule they were hoping I'd never read. They say power hates sunlight. That Sunday, we dragged a little bit of dawn onto my porch and watched who squinted. By 9, folding chairs were multiplying like rumors. Steam rose from travel mugs, and the air hummed with the cautious electric. Politeness of strangers about to become something else. My dog, Scout, made rounds with a seriousness suggesting he had appointed himself head of morale. I started with the line that had lit the fuse in me. Article 3, I said, holding up a printout. Members representing 20% can call a special meeting by petition. How many is 20%? A man in a baseball cap asked. His name tag, Lauren's idea, said Samir. Depends. On how many homes? I said. Redwood told me last month we have 204. That's 41 signatures. Lauren set a box of muffins on the porch rail like contraband. 41 is doable, she said, eyes flinty. My 6th graders get more people to show up for book club. Rita, who had seen the neighborhood in blueprint and in drought, spoke like someone warning us about a steep step. They'll say it's invalid if a comma is crooked, she said. Make sure every address is right. Make sure every name matches the deed. Also, a new voice said from the edges, a man in a pressed shirt, pale and watchful. They've been collecting proxies. Heads turned. And you are, I asked. He hesitated, then stepped into the light. Miguel Alvarez, he said. Unit 57. I did a short stint on the architectural committee. They'd get people to sign general proxies at the picnic, just so we can count you as present. Then they'd hold them. They used them like a fire extinguisher, break glass when needed. A low murmur moved through the group. I felt my spine stiffen. Then we don't give them glass to break, I said. No general proxies. We go door to door with the petition, and with information, and we keep records that would make an auditor smile. Samir's grin was quick and fierce. I'll set up a signal group, he said. No HOA email, no public Facebook. Encrypted. We'll call it Maple Grove Votes. As if the street had ears, a car idled at the corner. A white sedan with the security company's logo. The driver pretended to be entranced by his phone while his dash cam stared at us with an insect eye. Beige surveillance. I told them about the envelope, the typed threat, the way the night had listened when I read it. No one laughed it off. Lauren swore softly. Rita's mouth went small. They can't enforce a rule that doesn't exist, Miguel said. They'll write one if they can, though. We split the map like a war room choosing theaters. Birch Court was Samir's. Maple Loop, mine. Lauren took the cul-de-sacs where the flags bloomed. Rita volunteered to be our checker of commas and names. Miguel, who seemed to carry his caution like a tool, offered to research an inspector of elections, if we got that far. Don't knock after dark, Rita said, and everyone nodded like she had just said, don't drink bleach. We were inventing etiquette for resistance. By noon, the porch looked like a command center built from a bake sale. The ledgers were out. Names were grouped. My table had become a staging ground for clipboards and courage. People came late, breathless, their faces pinched with a kind of guilty hope. A retired nurse, a pair of newlyweds, a teenager in a hoodie, Maya, who said, My mom works nights. She hates all this, but she can't be here. Can I help? Please, I said, and meant so many things. When the last chair scraped back to the garage, I stood alone in the quiet echo of plans. Scout nosed my hand, then trotted to the edge of the lawn where the sunlight braided the grass. The white sedan was gone. The corner felt emptier for its absence. The printer whirred as it spat the final petition page, the house filled with the small mechanical confidence of ink becoming intention. I was sliding papers into a folder when a thunk rattled the mailbox. Inside, another white envelope, no stamp, no return address. My fingers felt both numb and too alive as I tore it open. A single sheet, a single line. Unauthorized assembly observed. Fines will accrue. Below it, A photograph of my porch, our chairs, our faces, blurred but ours. I stood very still and listened for footsteps, for a car door, for the click of a camera's satisfaction. Instead, there was only the soft, relentless sound of the printer in the other room, still making copies. They say a doorbell is an invitation. I learned it's also a mirror, and some days it reflected the bravest version of me. He first chime was the hardest. Birch Court, number 12. A wreath of faded seashells and a "bless this mess" mat that made my throat ache with ironic tenderness. Samir stood beside me, clipboard under his arm like a shield. I pressed the bell with my thumb and felt the tiny click shoot like a current into my chest. An older woman answered, eyes wary over, a chain lock. "We're not selling anything," I said quickly. "We're neighbors. We're organizing a special meeting. The board postponed the election." "You mean canceled?" she said, and slid the chain back. "Come on, then. I've been saving." A rant. Her name was Mrs. Chen. Her cat, Lemon, judged us from the arm of the couch. She signed carefully, the pen hovering before each letter as if accuracy equaled safety. When she handed the clipboard back, her fingers brushed mine and lingered. A silent thank you for knocking and not just muttering on the internet. Not every door was a welcome. A man opened with a phone already recording. "No soliciting," he said, pointing at a decal like a badge. "You step 1 foot on this porch again and I'm calling security." "We're happy to talk from the sidewalk," I said, swallowing. The impulse to explain the difference between politics and pest control. We took 2 steps back. He shut the door with the finality of a gavel. By noon, the stack of signatures had grown like a small, rebellious hill. 23, then 31, then 43. We passed our threshold and kept walking, because every single one felt like an insurance policy against the commas Rita feared. Lauren texted the group a selfie with 3 elderly neighbors and a caption, "The gray wave has opinions." Miguel sent a PDF of the state nonprofit statute with highlighter as neon as his caution. "Members may call a special meeting. Bylaws cannot reduce this right." At number 88 Maple Loop, the board president met us in a polo the color of confident money, Brad Weston. I'd only ever seen him from a distance, his back to us at the microphone during member comment like we were weather he could not control but might outlast. "Afternoon," he said, which is what people say when they're deciding whether to be cordial or cruel. "I've had reports of harassment. We're collecting signatures for a special meeting per Article 3, I said, keeping my voice on the flattest ground I could find. "We're staying on sidewalks when requested." "You're creating division," he said, "and security will be informed. No canvassing is allowed." "On public sidewalks it is," Samir said, every syllable wrapped in velvet and steel. He dialed without breaking eye contact. When the patrol car rolled up, my stomach clenched so hard I felt it in my jaw. The officer was younger than me, with eyes that had seen worse than HOA scuffles. He listened. He looked at where we were standing. He cleared his throat in a way that made it sound like he swallowed a laugh. "This is a civil matter," he said. "They're on public property. As long as they're not blocking the way or being disorderly, they're fine." Brad's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Fine," he said, and he retreated into his beige fortress, closing the door like it was an exclamation point. The next morning, a community update slid into inboxes. Redwood reminded us of safety concerns and the board's discretion to disallow solicitation, punctuated by a line that felt surgically vague. "Please refrain from door-to-door activity and await further communication." Maya converted, our paper hill into a cloud. She scanned signatures with a diligence born of stakes she could not yet name. "Half the fun of revolutions is spreadsheets," she said, and her grin knocked a year off my cynicism. Rita cross-checked names against county records until her eyes watered. Miguel found the HOA's registered agent and drafted a cover letter so precise it was almost poetry. We printed, numbered, and bound the petition like it might be asked. To testify. Delivery day, we split the difference between trust and paranoia. Certified mail to Redwood. Certified mail to the registered agent. A hand-delivered set to Redwood's office, where a receptionist with lashes like fans said, "Elaine is in a meeting," in a tone that said she might be in one until the heat death of the universe. "Could you sign a receipt?" I asked. "We don't sign for hand deliveries," she said, regretful as a broken umbrella. I felt the old fear skitter up my spine. Miguel slid his phone onto the counter, its camera already running. "We'll just note time and date," he said, to the air, to the future, to whatever judge might exist in our heads. That night, the email arrived. Subject, petition response. "Your petition has been received," it read. "However, the board has adopted an emergency policy requiring notarized signatures on any petition calling a special meeting. As such, your submission is invalid. Please cease unauthorized canvassing. Enforcement actions may follow." My hand went icy around the mouse. In the signal chat, dots bloomed as everyone began typing at once. The printer in the other room woke like a creature startled in its sleep and whirred to life, and in the hallway, as if conjured by the word emergency, a shadow paused at my frosted glass door, then a slow, deliberate knock. I braced for a summons. Instead, the woman on my porch held out a stamp like a shield. "Priya Menon," she said, breathless, hair half out of its clip, a tote bag banging her hip. "Unit 12, I'm a mobile notary. I saw the email. They can't do that midstream, make you notarize yesterday's signatures today, but if they want seals, I brought a sea of them." Behind her, the night hummed with sprinkler hiss and cicada song. I stepped back and she stepped in, spreading tools across my table like a surgeon. Journal, embosser, ink stamp, extra pens. "I called 2 friends," she said. "They owe me favors from the mortgage refinance boom. They can be here by 9. We'll make this legal enough to shine." The signal chat ballooned with plans and profanity. Samir. "Notary clinic on the Greenbelt?" Miguel. "Public area. Redwood will cry trespass." Rita. "Use the church parking lot. Pastor Jim owes me for the pumpkin fiasco of 2018. Lauren. "On it." Maya. "I'll make a QR code for info sheets." A moment later. "Also, my mom can come before her shift." Priya flipped her journal open. "Also, full disclosure, I'm not a lawyer," she said. "But my sister is." She texted, "Emergency policies have to be adopted at a properly noticed meeting. They can't impose new burdens on statutory rights. Even if they could, they can't apply it retroactively." Miguel chimed in with a link. "Exactly. State law beats bylaws beats Brad woke up cranky. We're sending a demand letter tonight. Still, let's overcomply. It steals their excuse." By dusk, the church lot buzzed like a tailgate for democracy. Camping chairs, clipboards, the smell of summer dust and car upholstery. Priya's friends arrived, one named Hector with 4 arms like a folklorist's oak tree, another, Danny, who wore a denim jacket covered in enamel pins that clinked like tiny bells. They set up folding tables. "Next," Priya called, cheerful, as a carnival barker, and the line inched. Signatures transformed into stamped oaths with a series of soft, authoritative thunks. The sound did something to me. Each thud was a small gavel in our favor. The fear that had slithered out of my mailbox and into my bones receded an inch at a time. Maya's mom came in navy scrubs, eyes rimmed with the kind of tired that doesn't erase with sleep. "I'm Lila," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Maya told me you're the brave ones." "We're the stubborn ones," I said, and she laughed softly. Her hand shook a little as she signed. "I work nights at county," she said, voice low. "I don't have time for this, and I hate that they count on that. Thank you for doing all this." Her gaze flicked to Maya, who pretended to be absorbed. In scanning IDs, cheeks flushed with a pride I recognized like a photograph from a family album. A white sedan crawled past, the security logo a decal moon. It didn't stop. We didn't either. By 10, we had notarized 87 signatures. Lauren did a happy dance in the headlights. Miguel's demand letter was waiting in my inbox, precise and unignorable. The emergency policy is void. The petition is sufficient. Call a special meeting within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in statutory remedies. He CC'd Redwood's registered agent and, for good measure, a state oversight email he'd dug up like a buried coin. We delivered at dawn, a caravan of sealed envelopes and sleep-sanded eyes. The receptionist's lashes were less friendly this time. "Elaine is unavailable," she said, eyes skittering like minnows. "We filmed the clock. We filmed the handoff. We filmed our own tired, determined faces." The reply landed at 4:13 p.m. Subject, special meeting notice. "We have scheduled a special meeting of the members for the purpose of addressing recent concerns." It read, "Tuesday, 1 p.m. via online platform. Advanced registration required. Questions may be submitted in writing. No live comment." The breath left me in a flat, angry exhale. Tuesday at 1. When teachers teach, when nurses nurse, when the new parents we met at unit. 34 stagger into naps. When ordinary life is at work. Samir's text came sharp and bright. "They think they can hide behind a weekday screen." Rita followed with a sentence that felt like a key turning. "Then we'll bring our own sunlight." I didn't know what that meant yet, but as night fell and the porch light drew moths to its small, stubborn heat, I sensed it. We were done asking permission to be heard. If they locked the windows and drew the blinds, we'd take the meeting outside and let the sky be our witness. We decided two things at once. We would show up to their Tuesday webinar with our microphones muted and our eyes wide open, and we would set a date for our own special meeting, properly noticed, properly run, properly ours. Rita drafted the notice like a proclamation. Notice of special meeting of the members called by petitioners per Article 3 and State Statute 5110. It began, unromantic and perfect. Date, 12 days from Tuesday. Time, 6 p.m. Place, St. Bartholomew's East Lot, by permission of Pastor Jim, who remembered Rita's pumpkins and smiled like he'd been waiting to forgive someone. Purpose, to recall the current board and elect new directors. Inspector of Elections, Ms. Evelyn Harrigan, registered parliamentarian, a woman whose biography read like a lighthouse. We'll send certified copies to Redwood and the registered agent, Miguel said, and we'll hand-deliver to every door. Bylaws say 10 days notice minimum. We give them 12. We overcomply so hard their excuses get a nosebleed. Maya built a website with a volunteer form and a page titled Know Your Rights that read like a bedtime story for a community that had forgotten how to sleep without worrying about fines. Priya marshaled her notary army, and Samir booked a PA system from a theater buddy who said, "Democracy deserves decent sound." Tuesday at 12:58 p.m., we gathered in Lauren's living room, the webinar projected onto a cream wall, coffee sweating in cups. The registration had been a scavenger hunt, links that expired, CAPTCHA tests that felt like hazing. Rita's name tag appeared as Right 4, like even the software didn't trust her name. The board popped onto our wall in crisp rectangles. Brad wore the confident money polo again. Elaine from Redwood smiled as if her reflection might give her a performance review. "Thank you for your engagement," she said, and the chat, disabled, said nothing back. They read questions, in monotone. Why was the pool closed? Supply chain. Where were the financial statements? In process. Would there be an election? When conditions permit. A slide flashed, worded like a sigh. Due to abuse of the forum, live comment is suspended. When someone asked about the petition, Brad's smile thinned into something with an edge. "We appreciate community passion," he said, "but unauthorized activities create division. The board has scheduled a conversation with legal counsel." "So, they scheduled a feeling," Lauren muttered. It felt funny until it didn't. At 1:47 they adjourned. No votes, no dates, no sunlight. We sat in the sudden quiet as if the projector had turned not just off but cold. I heard Maya's breath catch and found my own hands clenched around nothing. "Okay," Samir said softly, and it sounded like a bell. "Now we make ours." The next 10 days ran like a relay. We hit porches, slid notices under doormats, stuck a copy inside the bulletin board at the clubhouse until someone tore it down, and we put up another with a strip of neon tape that said, "Copy." Yard signs sprouted, "You are the quorum," in cheerful, defiant fonts. Security pulled a couple, neighbors planted 4 more. Even beige houses looked less beige with a sign in the lawn like a heartbeat. Redwood emailed reminders about a no signage policy on common area. We replied with photographs of our signs on private property and a screenshot of a statute. They sent a warning about unauthorized gatherings on HOA property. We printed our permit for the church lot, blew it up to poster size, and taped it to a folding table. Miguel found Ms. Harrigan, who arrived at my house 2 days before the meeting carrying a black case and an aura of concentrated competence. "I've run annual meetings in church basements where half the room was cousins not speaking," she said, setting out seals and envelopes with a precision that calmed me like a measured dose. "You give me your list of members? I'll give you a clean count. We'll use numbered ballots, directed proxies, watchers from both sides, sealed boxes. If they lose, they'll lose clean." "Both sides?" I asked, grimacing. "We invite them to appoint a watcher," she said. "If they decline, that becomes part of the record, too." The afternoon of the meeting bloomed hot and slow. We strung cafe lights across the lot like a promise kept. The PA crackled, someone fixed it. A domino of relief toppled along the volunteers. Priya's table sat ready, pen-lined and bright. Maya set out water jugs and printed badge stickers that said, "Member," in a blocky font that made me think of bridges. People came like weather, in gusts. Scout, wearing a bandana Lauren had insisted, worked the aisle like a seasoned campaigner. Lila arrived in scrubs, hair damp at the temples, and I realized she had slept maybe 2 hours and spent one here. Mr. Chen walked lemon in a carrier. Mrs. Chen laughed at herself and signed anyway. At 6:02, Ms. Harrigan tapped the mic. It pinged, like a spoon on a glass. "We'll begin with registration," she said. "Members check in to the right, proxies to the left. If you are here but not on the roll, hold tight. We have a remedy. We will not be rushed, and we will not be delayed." At 6:14, Samir leaned in. "We're close," he whispered. "We need 40 more to be safe." 40 felt like Everest. Then a minivan pulled up and 3 nurses slid out and Rita appeared on foot, breathless and beaming, a fan of directed proxies in her hand like she had learned card magic at 80. Elaine and a man I recognized from a Redwood staff photo walked, up in suits that looked like they'd wilt in 15 minutes. They handed Ms. Harrigan a letter and took out their phones to film. "The board objects to the validity of this meeting," Elaine said. "Proceed at your own risk." "Objection noted," Ms. Harrigan said, placing the letter in a folder labeled Objections as neatly as if she'd premonitioned the tab. "Your watcher?" she asked. The Redwood man blinked. "No," she continued, cheery as a cashier. "Then please stand outside the counting area." At 6:27, Maya jogged over with a count written in marker on her forearm. "We're 1 short?" "If nobody else shows," she said, energy trembling like a live wire. I stared out at the street and prayed, not to a god so much as to the stubborn spirit of every porch we had stood on. A hatchback rolled up and a teenager climbed out, hoodie up, eyes steady. "My mom's at work," he said, handing over a proxy with a hand that didn't look old enough to have so much in it. "She said to tell you she's with you." "Ms." Harrigan looked at the proxy, checked the roster, nodded, and lifted the mic. "We have quorum," she said, the words round and solid. "The special meeting of the members is now called to order." The cheer rose up and met the cafe lights in the warm air. a sound that felt like it could lift shingles. And then, blue. Lights flickered at the edge of the lot, cutting their own cold brightness through our summer glow, and somewhere behind them I heard the low burr of sirens drawing close. Blue lights turned our warm cafe glow to winter. But our paperwork didn't shiver. The cruiser rolled in slow, sirens down to a somber hum. The officer's face was lit by our string lights, his expression the careful blank of someone who knows. The difference between an emergency and a neighbor with a binder. Elaine from Redwood stepped forward, letter in hand like a warrant. "Officer," she said, "this is an unauthorized gathering. The board did not sanction this." Pastor Jim, bless his pumpkin-loving soul, lifted his permit like a lantern. "This is church property," he said. "I sanctioned it. The lot is reserved until 9. We're within the decibel limit and we brought our own trash bags." The officer looked from permit to crowd to Ms. Harrigan's tidy table. He cleared his throat. "Y'all got rules?" he asked. "We have rules," Ms. Harrigan said, and the slight smile at the edge of her mouth made me want to sit up straighter. "Registration complete, quorum achieved, we're in the recall phase." Elaine tried again. "This will cause division. Objection is noted," Ms. Harrigan said, and slid the second letter into the objections folder like a magician making a coin vanish. "It is not dispositive. Please stand outside the counting area. The CR." Officer nodded. "Carry on," he said, and the blue lights clicked off, returning our cafe bulbs to summer. We carried on. "Order of business," Ms. Harrigan read, voice silk over steel. "Item 1, motion to recall the current board." A hand shot up. A voice I recognized as Maya's said, "So moved." Lila seconded, one palm still cupping the condensation of a water jug. "Discussion?" Ms. Harrigan asked. Brad stood, polo crisp in the heat. "This is performative," he said. "You don't know what it takes to run a community. You'll miss the old board when the bills come due." My hand trembled and then steadied. "We know the bills," I said, turning to the crowd, to the bay. Faces I knew now by dog name and front yard and folded chairs. "We've paid them. We're not here to burn anything down. We're here to stop being treated like trespassers in our own neighborhood. We want open meetings, transparent books, elections when the bylaws say elections. If we mess up, we'll do it in daylight." Hands lifted. Heads nodded. Rita's gaze met mine like an elder handing over a seal. "Ballots," Ms. Harrigan called. Numbered slips rustled through the line like leaves. Watchers, 2 of ours, one from Redwood at last minute, took their posts. Directed proxies, the ones Rita had gathered like rare birds, were logged. "Mark clearly," the inspector said. "Fold once. Place it in the slot." The counting took the kind of time that stretches and thins. We listened to the steady scratch of tally marks, the clink of ice in plastic cups, the faint whoop of a child discovering a moth. Scott lay at my feet, sighing like an old man. Maya stood near the counting table, vibrating with focus, her hoodie sleeves shoved up, marker ink fading on her forearm. Elaine hovered, objecting to 3 proxies and 2 signatures. "Objection noted," Ms. Harrigan said each time, eyes steady. "Eligibility challenges must be raised prior to ballot issuance. These stand." The Redwood watcher swallowed, then eventually just watched. I watched, too. Watched the way community looks when it remembers itself. Mrs. Chen whispering jokes into Lemon's carrier. Samir practicing a speech under his breath, then forgetting it to clap for someone else. Lila, sleepless, kind, handing a water bottle to the security guard who had drifted close, curiosity outweighing duty. When the last ballot slid into the box, Ms. Harrigan counted once, twice, a third time with her lips moving. She breathed in and lifted the mic. The cafe lights made halos on her glasses. "By a vote of 121 to 64, she said, "the motion to recall passes. The board is recalled." The sound that rose then wasn't a cheer so much as an exhale we'd all been. holding since the email that said, indefinitely. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot I'd tied around my own hope. Brad's face flickered, surprise, anger, something like relief, then shuddered. He stood very straight, then very still, then he sat. Item 2, Ms. Harrigan said, unstoppable. Election of directors to fill vacant seats. Nominations from the floor, names filled the air. Samir Patel, Miguel Alvarez, Lauren Tate, Rita Garcia. A pause, and then someone, a voice from the back I didn't recognize, said my name, and it felt like hearing myself from a farther room. I turned to see Lila's small nod, steadying. We wrote them down. We voted again. We counted again. The summer evening slid toward nostalgia as we waited, the sky becoming the color of my door. My stomach tightened when the counting paused. Loosened. When it resumed. Headlights swept the lot and kept going. Somewhere, a late train talked to itself on the tracks. Results, Ms. Harrigan said at last. Directors elected, Patel, Alvarez, Garcia, Tate, and... She looked up, smiling with her eyes. Miller. My name and the world tilted. Samir grabbed my hand, laughing in disbelief. Miguel exhaled like a man stepping out of a cold river. Lauren whooped. Rita's mouth softened into a smile that held 30 years of here. Elaine snapped her folder closed. The board will contest, she said to no one in particular. Council will advise. Objection noted, Ms. Harrigan replied, a half beat from weary now. The members have spoken. We didn't go home. We held our organizational meeting right there on the asphalt, mosquitoes and all. Motion to appoint interim officers, Miguel said. Second, I heard myself say, because apparently I say second now. Samir took president, me secretary, Miguel treasurer, Lauren and Rita members at large. Motion to suspend non-safety, fines for 30 days. Passed. Motion to notice an open meeting for budget review and an independent audit. Passed. Motion to solicit proposals from new management companies and notify Redwood of termination subject to transition. Passed. Pastor Jim clapped quietly, like someone watching a long chess game end in solvable peace. Before we adjourned, I asked for one more motion. Revise the exterior color guidelines to expand the palette and allow reasonable expression. Without pre-approval for doors, I said, trying not to sound like I was pleading with my own past year. Laughter warmed the edges of the night. Rita raised her hand. Second, she said, eyes bright. Passed. When we finally began to fold chairs, the security guard ambled over. Need a hand? He asked, and took 2 at a time to the stack. Elaine and the Redwood man were long gone. Brad stood at the far edge for a moment, then came over. You've started something you'll have to finish, he said, not unkindly. I nodded. We will, I said. He looked relieved and tired and human, and then he walked away. Back home, I leaned my forehead against my robin's egg door and laughed. A small, incredulous sound that felt like a hinge unsticking. I put the objections folder on my kitchen, table next to the bylaws, next to a clean spiral notebook with boards scrawled on the front in Maya's blocky font. We hadn't just taken something back. We'd taken something on. A neighborhood isn't a place. It's a promise. And now, in ink and in daylight, we'd signed our names.